You're listening to Cannonball Mindset, a podcast dedicated to helping people achieve the most out of their personal and professional lives. The Cannonball Mindset challenges you to step out of your comfort zone and lean into the possibility of having a life of abundance. Disruptors, innovators, and groundbreakers are all welcome. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the Cannonball Mindset. I am Chad Sanschagrin, your host, and certain times in life you get these great, unbelievable opportunities. I got to play baseball with Cal Ripken, and today I got to work out with Mat Fraser, five-time CrossFit champion, two-time runner-up.
Yep.
You were only in 7. Were you in 7 competitions? How many?
I competed at the CrossFit Games 7 times. 2014, 2015, I was second place, and then 2016 through 2020, first place.
So you're like Barry Sanders. You locked it up. You won, and then you were out.
Yeah, it was after the 2015 season going into 2016. I really figured out what works for me, how to train properly. So I really doubled down on everything training into the 2016 season.
Yeah.
That season, I won by the largest margin of victory in the sport's history.
Wow.
And so I just kind of was okay, that's the way to do it. Double down on that. So 4 of my 5 wins, I broke the record for the largest margin of victory.
Wow.
Yeah.
And just said that's it. We'll get.
Yeah. So it was just one of those things. I'm like, all right, I only have a handful of years at this. There's a shelf life on being a professional athlete.
Yeah.
And so I just went in the grand scheme of life, 5 years isn't that long.
Snapshot.
And so I just had no balance in my life and just went all in on training, competing, and got everything out of it that I could.
Yeah, awesome. We're going to spend some time talking about it. I want to go back to how it started, because most people know you as Mat Fraser, the champion.
The CrossFit, yep.
Right. But the idea of how this all started is unbelievable. We were talking about it at dinner last night, where most people have a passion for it.
Yeah.
And they're mission minded, and the commission is the result. You went the exact opposite way. It was about the commission.
Yeah, a little bit. Early on, so I came from a weightlifting background. So Olympic weightlifting, it's a very monotonous sport. When you compete, you take 3 attempts at the snatch, 3 attempts at the clean and jerk, and that's it. So you're active, on the competition floor competing is less than 6 minutes. Each lift takes 1 point something seconds.
Yeah.
I had a full weightlifting career, thought I was done with that. And you're doing that for the love of it. There's no sponsorships. There's no, unless you're at the highest of high level, then you're still making just enough to scrape by. So through my whole weightlifting career, never made a dime, retired from weightlifting, joined the working world, then realized, all right, I need an education, started university, and just started gaining weight. So it was either change my diet or start exercising. Yeah. And I was like, I don't want to change my diet. So I just started working out. And then it was my home gym right down the road here, Champlain Valley CrossFit. They were hosting a competition in-house. So, just the surrounding gyms come in and everyone kind of throws down. And so he signed me up for the competition. I won it. It was $500. And keep in mind, at the time, I'm a full-time student at University of Vermont.
Yeah.
Pursuing mechanical engineering and a business degree. And so it's just I made $500 on a weekend doing something that I was enjoying anyways.
Right.
And so I never wanted to have a part-time job while I was in school. I just wanted to focus on school. So it was just a way to make some pocket money instead of having a schedule that I had to coordinate for a job with school schedule. It was I can just compete Saturday, Sundays when there is no school.
Yeah.
And
that was your part-time job.
Yeah, I looked at that as my part-time job, and then the competitions just get incrementally bigger. The prize money, sponsorships, everything just gets a little bit bigger every time, and before you know it, it's life-consuming.
Yeah. When you decided you wanted to go to school for mechanical engineering and business, what was the plan? CrossFit wasn't in the mindset then. What was Why mechanical engineering and business? At that point, you're already enrolled in school. Yeah, you don't know you're going to make a career in CrossFit. Yeah. What was your trajectory that you were planning on doing?
So school was always a high priority, especially once I got to university, because I had seen so many athletes that focus solely on their career, and then they hit 40 years old
Yeah.
and they never achieved whatever podium they wanted, or and so they're always trying to hang on, and and then they're so limited on what they can do the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Like, and I just saw so many of the same story like that. So I was just like, man, I need to have something for after my sports career.
After your Olympic lifting career.
Yeah. Well, especially during my weightlifting, because I had a really bad back injury, broke my L5 in 2 spots when I was 18. And you're never planning on an injury. You never know when it's going to come. You don't know if it's going to come from a PR attempt or lifting your gym bag after training. And I went from, I think in the junior ranks, I was one of the top ranked junior lifters, so under 20 years old in the country, and then broke my back, and I just saw it went like gone. I'm no longer on the radar. I have nothing. And so that was like the big push to really focus on school, of like, man, this sports career can be over the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
So then after weightlifting, went and worked out in Alberta in the oil fields, fell in love with that work environment. And
the oil fields.
Yeah. Yeah. So like we were the like gophers on the field. We were the lowest guys on the totem pole, but I just liked the work environment. I liked the work schedule. I liked, it's minimum 12-hour days. You're 7 days to 28 days on, and then you get equal time off. Yeah. So, I was just never a fan of two-day weekends. I'm like, no, if I'm working 8 hours, I'd rather work 12. Like,
yeah, right.
My day's already fucked if I work an 8-hour day, so might as well work the whole day,
Yeah, right. And that's hard. That's hard. That's not like easy labor.
It was manual labor. So we did, like we just did spraying. So like we'd drive a 5,500 truck with a big flatbed with 2, I think they were like 1,000-gallon tanks on them, 2 water pumps and 300-foot of hose. And so like around a wellhead, they can't have any vegetation in case there's a fire. So they want no vegetation around. So sometimes you show up and you got to spray like 10 feet around the wellhead. Other times they're like, hey, this 12-acre field, you got to spray the whole thing. So you pour this blue dye in the spray, and you got a gas mask, helmet, full suit, gloves, steel toe, like the whole gambit.
People right now are trying to imagine Mat Fraser in the gear out there spraying farms.
And it was like, we worked some jobs where it was like we had to be on site and working by like 3:30 a.m. And so you're showing up and you have your high reflective one piece on. Yeah. You're covered head to toe in PPE, and then by noon it's now 100 degrees out. Yeah, so now you're stripping layers from under, and it was
dying.
Yeah, it was a miserable job, but it not only showed me what I want to do, but it showed me what I don't want to do. Yeah. It gave me a good dose of reality of like, hey, this is your life without an education. Like, yeah, this is a great summer job, but do you want to be doing this for the next 20 years? And it was like, fuck no. No. And so enough people up there just said, if you don't drink or drug, if you don't have a wife or kids at home, and you have a college degree, they're like, you can write your own paycheck out here. Yeah. And I was just like, okay. I was like,
I'll do the college
degree. I already got those other 2 things done. Let me go get this college degree.
I don't do drugs.
Yeah.
Let me get the college
I don't have kids yet. I'm not married. So I was like,
so why mechanical engineering?
I'm really good with numbers and I can't read. Like straight up. I don't know why. Numbers just
make sense to you.
Make sense. Like I remember a childhood, like 6th grade teacher. Like I did geometry in 6th grade, algebra in 7th grade. And it was just the teacher was annoyed with me because I was distracting the class. And I remember, and that was, he identified that he's like, oh, you're not a problem child. You're just not challenged. So he was like, you have straight A's in the class, but you're done all your work in the first 5 minutes. Then you distract the class for the next 40. Yeah. So I remember he like got another teacher to watch the room because he was just so fed up with me. And then like he was like, I'll be back in 15 minutes. And he walked over to the high school, got a geometry book, came back, and he was like slammed it on the desk and was like, that's what you're doing now. And I was like, oh, all right, cool. And then so that was kind of that was kind of the start of it. And then when I forget what test, like SATs or what are the other ones?
The SATs.
SATs, and then what's
CMAT?
ACT. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, and I remember they were like, I scored perfect or damn near perfect on the math portion. And then they asked me if I missed the reading section. They were like, did you leave? And I was like, no, what are you talking about? You scored 0, like 0. And I remember when I was taking the test, I was like reading the story, then you have to answer all the questions. And I'm like halfway through the story and they're like, all right, 5 minutes. And I was like, oh shit. So
I'm still reading the story.
So when my guidance counselor saw my scores, he was like, you're amazing at math and you can't read. You should be an engineer. And I was like,
yeah, there it is. That's the
cool.
perfect.
I'm in.
and you like putting stuff together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I like working with my hands, all that stuff.
So that was the goal. The goal was something in mechanical engineering, at least something to fall back on mechanical engineering.
Yeah. And then during my rookie season, I worked a summer internship here, and, just by luck of the draw, my boss was a CrossFitter. So like very helpful when it came to competing and stuff, of like having to leave work on Fridays to get to the competition, stuff like that. But yeah, I got that internship. And it was an aerospace company, so I was like, dude, I'm going to be a rocket scientist. This is going to be sick. Yeah. And then it was just sitting in a cubicle. And it was as, like, I don't know, like generic of a cubicle, like gray floor, gray cubicle, gray ceilings. It was identical to that. And I was just like, is this the rest of my fucking life? And this was like the most sought after internship in the state. Yeah. Like everyone else, all the other students that had it were over the fucking moon about it. And I was like, I just remember the feeling of like, you open your eyes in the morning and audibly you're just like, fuck. Yeah. Like I have to drive 45 minutes, sit in a cubicle for 9 hours and then drive 45 minutes home. This is miserable.
Yeah.
And so my rookie season of the games was that year. So like my lunch break, I'm out behind the company doing like hill sprints and stuff. I was like, that's when I pushed the chips all in on CrossFit, because I was like, the desk job will be here if CrossFit fails. So I'm going all in on this CrossFit thing.
You have highly educated parents. Your mom's a doctor, correct?
Yeah, my mom's a doctor, and I was told that this is coming from my dad. He was like, they graduated me from high school so I could go to the Olympics.
Yeah, because your dad was in the Olympics as a
so they were pairs figure skating, freestyle figure skating in the
Canadian,
76.
Right, the 76 Canadian Olympics. So your mom's a doctor. They're both Olympians.
Yeah.
What are they saying to you when you're doing when you're doing great in math? You're not doing great in reading. You're gonna now go all in on CrossFit. You are like, you break your L5. Like, at what point did your parents say, "Hey, like"? Chill or like all in? Like what?
So my mom is off the charts intelligent. Like 13 years of post-secondary school. She won Doctor of the Year for Vermont. She worked as a family physician, and I don't know the actual job title, but she worked with third-year med students at the university. So like incredibly, incredibly high achiever. And then my dad just grew up differently. Like education wasn't a priority, or like they didn't have the resources for, like, my mom went to private school her whole life. And my dad was just like one of 8 and went to public school, and like just a generic story.
Yeah.
And it was funny, my mom, when I was younger, always pushed school education, like through middle school, high school.
Yeah.
And then in university, it was my dad. And I think my dad may have seen some limitations that not having the education just kind of made. Yeah. And so he was always the one pushing. And then even once I started CrossFit, I was well into university at that point. And, my dad, he would kind of be like, hey, like you're doing well at this, but like, what happens the first time somebody offers you, $50,000 to drop out of school and just do this full time? Yeah. And, I was just like, nope, like school's the number one priority, school. Cause CrossFit at the time didn't provide enough opportunities to justify giving up on your education. And then it was after my rookie year. Yeah. After my rookie year, it was then my mom was like, hey, like, are you going to go all in on this CrossFit thing? Like, you're clearly very good. You can make a living at it. You're already like 99% of the way through school. And so once it was almost like I got the blessing from my parents to like, hey, you're at a point where this is an okay shift to make. By the time I got that blessing, I only had 1 semester left, and I was doing a double major, double minor. And I was like, if I go do CrossFit for 5 years and then try to come back and jump in on these senior level courses, I'm fucked.
Yeah, right.
So I was like, I'll grit my teeth through this last semester, finish it up, and then I'm just done forever.
Yeah. And that's what you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Matthew McConaughey talks about how he was going to law school at UT, and he called his dad and was like, I want to be an actor.
Yeah.
And he was expecting his dad to say, are you out of your mind? Like, are you crazy? You're in law school, you're at UT, finish this. And his dad was like, all right, go all in.
Yeah.
So what did that moment, and now being as a new father,
Yeah.
the idea of having that parental, like, blessing, as you called it,
Yeah.
like that blessing, like, okay, did that give you extra, maybe not extra motivation, but extra like push to be like, yeah, I'm gonna show them, or did you already know? Did you not need it?
No, I kind of already knew, it was more just like, okay, I don't know, it's kind of like, I was talking to a buddy about this yesterday, like changing the brakes on your car. It's like, there's nothing about it that's tricky, but I still want someone over my shoulder being like, yep, yeah, you're doing it right. Yeah. And then you can leave for 2 more hours, come back and be like, yep, yeah, you're good. Whereas if I did it by myself, I'm 99%, I'm still going to be fine doing it. But you just like having that reassurance.
That extra validation.
Yeah, exactly. So, once my parents were kind of like, hey, this is really producing something, you should go all in on it. Thank God I was that close to finishing, because I definitely, if things had ended up the way they did, I wouldn't be going back.
Yeah.
There's no reason. I never plan on working as an engineer now.
Yeah.
But it's just nice knowing that I have it, that it's kind of like a fallback plan. And it definitely changed how I looked at things. Like once you go through like engineering school, once you see like, I don't know, a compression tension diagram, you look at everything the same. Once you know how levers work, you always do that. Once, for me, it's like I'm just doing math problems. Yeah. All the time when I'm competing.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. How much did that engineering degree and that engineering education, how much did that help you in CrossFit? Oh,
incredibly. And so the gentleman who beat me so he won the games in 2015. He's also a mechanical engineer. So I think there is something about that mindset of just being good with numbers, being good with projecting out and doing math on the fly. I think it helps tremendously. Even something as simple as like you're in the middle of a chipper, you jump onto the rower, you're 12 seconds behind that guy, you got 1,000 meters to row. How much faster do I need to pull my splits than him to make up that 12 seconds? And doing
it in your head.
And just doing that in your head. And, so it kind of creates that place of comfort of like, you can just project out and know your split times, I know in the first round of 8, I'm like, am I going too fast? Am I too slow? Yeah. Just because I'm able to do those numbers on the fly a little bit better than most.
I try to do marathon math when you're like at mile 20, and I'm like, I gotta pick up 3 seconds, and I am not a mechanical engineer. I can tell you that. I'm on the reading side, not the math side, and I'm like, I gotta have it written down on my arm somewhere because I'm not gonna be able to figure it out on the fly.
I mean, the perfect example is when we were doing the marathon on the rower. Yeah. So I forget what year that was. Was it maybe 2018? Yeah. We had, on our first day of competition, the 4th event of the day was to row a marathon. So 42,000 meters and a bit. And,
meters.
And like, there's no movie playing. The music was terrible. There's no fan moving the air. So you're just trying to stay mentally engaged for like 3 hours, and it sucks. And I remember it was like at a certain point, it was right when, so my whole body, like when you get a hamstring cramp or like you get that hamstring flutter and it's oh shit, that's about to cramp.
That's right.
So I had that sensation in my calves, hamstrings, quads, and forearms. Every stroke, I'd finish a stroke and I would feel that flutter on all of them. And I would extend my arms back out and be like, okay, it didn't seize up that time. And I would do another and wait and then do another. And just did that. And I remember looking at the screen. We started with 42,000 meters. And there was 17,000 meters remaining. And so I was like, dude, I'm almost done.
I'm like, 17,000 meters
I'm like, the first number on the screen is a 1, and the second number's not a 9. So I'm like, I'm in the home.
You're counting backwards.
So I'm in the home stretch. I'm like, first number's a 1. So I'm like, I'm already close to the end. And then I start doing the math, and I'm like, I think it was like 17,400 meters, something. And I'm like, I'm pulling a 2-minute pace. 2 minutes times 17, all right, double that. And then I'm like, I have over an hour left. Like for like, maybe 10 minutes, I'm like, we're almost there, baby. We're almost there. And then you start doing the math and you're like, fuck.
Oh yeah.
I'm here for another hour.
Yeah.
And every stroke for that whole hour, you just feel that flutter, and you're like, nope, all right, keep going. Yeah.
I remember watching the documentary on the lady who swam from Cuba to Miami, and she did it unassisted. And she was she had to swim for, I don't know, 20 hours or some crazy number. And she said the sun was coming up, and she finally saw land. She saw Miami, and she was so excited, but then realized she still had 9 hours to swim.
Yeah.
Like, I see it. It's still 9 hours away, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so being able to do that math and that fly absolutely helps you. But let me ask you this question, because a lot of people see you as this this world champion, this guy, the fittest guy. What don't they see? And what I mean by that is, people at your level, are there insecurities? Are there imposter syndromes? I'm saying you got here not by so much design at first, but circumstance led you here, which is awesome. At what point do you go, yeah, am I supposed to be here?
Oh, all the time. All the time. I always talk about it, of like how I trained scared through my entire career.
What do you mean by that?
Just like, have you ever run faster than when you're playing tag and being chased? No, like that's your fastest. You feel their fingers right on your neck, and so you've never felt like you run faster. So that's just what I pictured every day in training. I pictured a competitor being right next to me and going faster. So I pictured I was always being chased. I always pictured the person designing the competitions going to try to program my weaknesses. So
wow.
Going into training every day of like, all right, at a certain point in my career, I had to start training things I was good at again. Because I trained so scared. I only trained weaknesses. I only trained things I was bad at. And so like the scores I'm seeing put out, like I'm seeing my performances, I'm like, man, I could get beat on that. I could get beat on that. And after 3 months of every workout I've done, I'm like, I'm getting beat or I'm close to somebody else, but they're all things that I'm terrible at.
Yeah.
And then I show up to competition, and now I'm getting to do things I'm good at. But training long enough with that mindset, like I started to believe, I'm like, man, I'm not fucking good at this. And then it's like, all right, you start throwing in some movements that I know I'm good at, or I know that I enjoy. And then you see yourself like, oh, okay, I am still good at this thing.
I still got it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the insecurities are there. I mean, especially when you're getting closer to competition, because that's when everyone starts getting louder. But then also that's when my training starts tapering off. So, if you're in the off season and you're feeling insecure, you see somebody else, do a big performance, you can go into the gym, test the workouts that they did, their scores, and you kind of prove to yourself, nope, okay, I still got it. I'm right there with them, or, all that. 2 weeks before the competition, you're training an hour a day. You're not really going max effort or max lifts. So you don't have that comfort blanket to prove to yourself that like, no, you got it. You're good. Yeah. So yeah, the insecurities are there.
And so this guy, but everything you just said seems like it's a complete mindset of paranoia. Like this idea, like the course director's out to try to sabotage, like give me the hardest workouts. Somebody's trying to catch me.
Well, like there were no rules.
Yeah.
There's no rules to the game. So, it could be, I know it's not going to happen, but it's,
but it pushed you.
Yeah, it was just a possibility. I never wanted to train for things to go right when things were going right. I wanted to train so things would go right even when everything was against me.
Yeah.
Even if everything was against me, which sometimes I felt it was, sometimes I didn't feel that way. But I just always trained for the worst case scenario.
I love that. Courtney DeWalter said when she's training for these Moab 250s or this, she'll go out on a 50-mile training run and not bring water.
Yeah,
she'll bring socks with holes in them, so it won't have she'll purposely make it as difficult as possible.
Yeah, it's
to train for what happens when.
Yeah, and so my first coach was incredible at this. Ben Bergeron, he was, and he's the one that really like ingrained a lot of that stuff into me. Like he would say, all right, we're doing this workout, like 21-15-9 of overhead squats and toe to bar or something. And then as soon as you would start, he would get behind you with one of the big like rubber bands and start whipping you. He would like throw sand on you mid workout, stuff like that. yeah, is it sometimes seen as over the top or whatever
Yeah.
and dramatic? Yeah, sure, maybe. But it's like, I then found when I went to competition, it's like, it doesn't matter if I get stung by a bee mid-event. It doesn't matter if my judge gives me a no rep that was unjustified. It's like, I'm just chugging through because that's what I've been practicing. I've been practicing for things to go wrong. You know, right before you start a swimming interval, it's like, boom, throw some water in your goggle. Right before you start a running interval, untie your shoelace real quick and then go. Because what are you going to do in a competition? Stop and empty your goggle? Fuck no, you're going to keep going, you know?
Keep going. Yeah. Do you think that carried over though to when you weren't training? This idea of like always being on guard, always being alert for not for danger, but for situations and circumstances that happen, because you're programming your mind to train one way, but you also have a life outside of CrossFit.
Now I do.
Yeah.
Prior, not really.
It was always about CrossFit in the middle of the competition.
Like now looking back, like I would take about a month off after the games, and then it was like I would get right back in my routine. So maybe in the front half of the season, like during like the open, I'm still doing some traveling, like a little bit here and there. But then as soon as the open's done, I'm home. You know, it's like on a day-to-day basis, I'll see Sammy. And like when we were living in Tennessee, I had a home gym there. So I would do my morning session at an affiliate with my training partner. Afternoon session, I would do at home. But it was from eyes open to eyes closed, revolved around training. You know, like we lived in a nice neighborhood and Sammy would go for a walk, a couple laps around the block every day. Every day she'd be like, you want to come for a walk? And I was just like, no, not even a little bit. Like I'm not putting in extra steps during my day. And it's like, as soon as I retired, we go on a 2-mile walk every day.
Yeah.
But I was just like, no, like it's going to tire out my legs for the afternoon session. So I can't do it.
Everything has a purpose.
Everything had a purpose. And so I was just in a phase of life where my lifestyle allowed that.
Yeah, right.
You know, like I had graduated college. I'm making enough money that I don't need to work a job. My like live-in girlfriend, wife, whatever you want to call her, like she worked in the CrossFit space. So she worked for Reebok. She worked the partnership between Reebok and the CrossFit Games. So she's been around high-level CrossFitters for years. She gets the routine. She understands how everything goes into it.
Understands the mindset.
O'Keefe has been by my side since, you know, very, very early on. And he was kind of the same mindset. So it's like when those are the two people that I'm seeing 99% of the days.
And they get you.
They get it. They're supportive of my goal. They see what's on the line. Your life kind of switches like that so quickly. You know, even the sense of I had a call with an accountant and he was like, hey, he's like, why do you live in Vermont? And I was like, oh no, just like where I grew up. It's where I live. I like it here. And I was like, why? He was like, I'll give you 9 reasons to move because of the 9% state income tax. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. I was like, well, where can I go that's free? And he listed off the 6 states and one of the states is Tennessee. And it's like, if you're moving to Tennessee as a CrossFitter,
That's the place, right?
at the time, it was like you went to Cookeville.
Yeah.
And it was literally like a 2-minute conversation with the accountant, hung up. I walk into our apartment. I'm like, Sammy, how do you feel about moving? She was like, where are we going? I was like, Tennessee. She was like, yeah, I'll go. And like, it was that, like, that was the extent of it. Like, cause we don't have kids, we don't have jobs, we can just pack up and go. So our lives became that so quickly. And it's not until after that I've realized like how on guard I was or how in fight mode I was the entire time. Because also I came from a weightlifting background. Within 3 months of competing in weightlifting, I was competing on a national level. Like it was a school age, so it was divided up by age and weight. So, but it's like my first weightlifting competition was school age nationals. And I was one of the best. So it's like from 12 years old, I was competing at a high level I'm not doing the sport for the love of the sport. I'm like, oh, I would do this to compete in this.
Yeah.
And then go from that straight into CrossFit. So then I hit 30 years old. I'm now retired, step away, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm wound up.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, now I got to figure out how to unwind.
Yeah.
18 years, I'm wound up. Now I got to unwind.
Yeah.
Was there a moment in your career that maybe you haven't shared or that you can think of that was a pivotal, emotional breaking moment where you didn't know one way, or was it always I'm gonna win? Was there a behind the scenes moment that you're like, gosh, I just don't know.
Oh yeah, a ton. So 2014 rookie season, and like keep in mind, like I've never watched the CrossFit Games. I don't know any of the athletes, anything. Like
so you just show up. You don't.
So-
You're like Mr. Miyagi, where like
so
like
so
black belt.
I'll step back a year earlier. My first time doing the CrossFit Open, it was the owner of the gym was like, I want you to sign up for the Open. I'm like, what is that? And so he signed me up for it. He was like, be here Friday at 4 p.m. So, cool. I show up Friday, 4 p.m. He's like, all right, here's the workout. And what was it? Oh, it was snatches and burpees. And so he just kind of tells me like, this is how you should do the workout. And it was to the point that I would set the bar down. He'd be like 3, 2, 1, go. And I'd be like, okay, go. So I had no idea what I was doing. Did that for, I think it was 5 weeks straight of just show up Friday at 4. And like, there were weeks where I would show up at Friday at 4 and then wouldn't show up again until the next Friday because I was in school full time.
Yeah.
So at the end of conclusion of those 5 weeks, he's like, congrats, you made it to regionals. And I was like, what is regionals? And he was like, be in Canton, Massachusetts on this date. And I was like, okay, cool. So like, that was my first run. Yeah. So went to regionals, didn't qualify for the games, thank God. And went back second season, still kind of the same attitude going into it. So when I finished the games in second place, I'm like cloud 9. I'm on top of the podium. I'm like, my life has changed forever.
Yeah.
This is crazy. Next year, 2015, first place from 2014 is retiring. And I got second place. So I'm like, I got this thing in the bag. So it's just a whole year of fucking off and training terribly.
And you still came in second place.
Yeah. So then I got second place again. And it was after the 2015. So second place again, 2014, second place, over the moon. Yeah. Second place in 2015, I am like in the ditches about it. And
just expectations, different expectations.
Yeah. Well, I just knew, I was like, that didn't represent what I'm capable of. It represented the effort and everything that I put into it this whole season, but I know that's not what I'm capable of. And so then, probably didn't show up to a gym for a couple months after that. Didn't know if I wanted to do it again. Because then it became very real that like I could dedicate full years to this and never win.
Yeah.
And that idea just was not okay with me. And so I was like, okay. So it took a couple years off. Like to some, I would say like, yeah, it was a depression. To others, I'm like, yeah, it was the blues, Yeah. And then I was just like, okay, the games are in 8 months, 10 months, whatever it is. In some aspects, you think back to where you were a year ago and you're like, fuck, that seemed like last weekend.
That's right.
It just goes by. So I was like, I made a deal with myself. Like, okay, if it's 10 months of just every decision I make in the day, no matter how big or small, every decision is going towards being better at competing.
So
and then
what was there that moment that you're in the valley, you're in that right, and then you're like, because I'm thinking the Rocky moment, where Adrian's laying in the hospital, and she says this and just win, Rocky, just win. Like, was there a just win where like you just said, all right, I'm pushing the poker chips all in, and I'm gonna go win.
Yeah, so I had like a room in our house in Tennessee that had no windows. It was like a hidden room behind a bookshelf.
Yeah, and
so that was like my office or like my like man cave, and but I loved going in there with the pen and paper, leave my phone, no TV, anything like that. And it's just like, you're just in there and you're like, all right, I'm not leaving for 3 hours. I'm just going to put every thought on a piece of paper. And for me, the thing that I struggled with that like kept me up at night was I got the same results, 2014 and 2015. I had the same medal around my neck. So why are the emotions around it so drastically different? And just was, I always call it, just be a 2-year-old with yourself. Like you answer something, why? Answer it again. Why? Answer it again. Until you boil it down to like, all right, is it pride, ego? Is it insecurities? Like what are the driving factors here? And I finally came to the conclusion that it had nothing to do with the end results of why I was upset. It had to do with the entire year leading into it. Because I was like 2014, I was doing backflips over second place.
Yeah.
And so it was my expectations, the preparation, the, getting everything out of it that I thought I could. Whereas like in 2015, I finished and I was like, man, I fucked that up. Like that's my fault that it ended up that way. And so I just went through and I was just like, and I couldn't put my finger on what was the straw that broke the camel's back. What was the final fork in the road that was the deciding factor? Because when I lost in 2015, it was by a couple points. So the other gentleman, it basically came down to, of a 15 workout weekend, it came down to the final workout. And don't quote me on this, but it was very close to the point that whoever won the workout between the two of us. So it didn't matter if we finished first and second or 19th and 20th.
Whoever out of the two,
whoever won between the two of us won the entire weekend. Or it was close to that.
Yeah.
Sorry. And so I was like, it literally was so close that I was like, fuck, was it that one night last week that I stayed up too late? Was it that one meal last week that was too shitty? Was it that one argument that I had with, like, what was it? And I couldn't decide which one it was. So I went, fuck it, I'm going to fix them all. Of just like, I'm going to have the perfect sleep schedule. I'm going to have the perfect diet. I'm going to have the perfect training regimen. I'm going to have the perfect people in my corner. And I just went like, even if it's fucking miserable, it's 10 months.
Yeah.
It's only 10 months. That 10 months is going to pass whether I'm miserable or I'm happy.
Yeah.
And so I just went, fuck it. I'm just going to push all the chips in for this 10 months. If it chalks up and it's not the results I want, fuck it. It was 10 months.
Yeah, right.
I've wasted more time doing dumber things.
Yeah.
Right. And then I won by the largest margin of victory. And I was just like, okay,
I got the recipe.
Now I have what I think is a good recipe and I can keep building off of this.
Yeah.
And then, for me, I'm more than happy not seeing anyone for weeks at a time. Like I like being a homebody. I like being introverted. So add that on top of the drive of I want to be alone because I don't want to cater my training to anyone else around me.
Yeah, right.
I want to work out on my schedule, on my equipment, doing exactly what's perfect for me.
Yeah.
And so, I just kind of isolated myself. I had training partners and stuff, but it was very much just I'm just doing what's good for me. And
that's unbelievable because we call that a shift moment, a see how I find truth moment,
Mm-hmm.
In that moment, in that man cave, deciding, all right, I did the self-discovery, I did the awareness. We talk about how the quality of your life is predicated on the questions you ask yourself, and you're asking yourself those hard questions, and then you come out of the man cave and you're like, that's it.
And it's just being brutally honest with yourself of, it on a whole variety of different levels of just like, all right, why am I insecure? Is it, my ego's hurt when I'm the last one on the floor still competing? Is it my pride gets hurt? Like trying to break it down to the most grassroots level and then just leaning into it and just like, okay, like if I want to be great at this, I got to put my pride aside, put my ego aside. I got to go back to basics. So the kind of like probably the story that summarizes that the best was after 2015, the event that went embarrassingly poorly was a sprint event. So it was like a zigzags and a couple hurdles, like 100 and some odd yards down, rest a minute and do it in reverse on the way back. And I think I finished dead last on both of them. And it was my old weightlifting coach who's from next town over, Facebook messaged me and was like, hey, like, I know you're beating yourself up. Like he was my weightlifting coach for 10 years. He knows me very well. He's like, I know your head's probably hanging low, keep your chin up, all that stuff. And then he was like, also, you suck at sprinting. Please remember that by trade, I'm a track coach. Anytime you want to help with it, let me know. And so I was like, yep, like I'll go back. so the same weight room that I went and trained in from 12 years old to 20 years old, I'm back there now as a 25 to, or I would have been, 25, 26, and joining the middle school track practice. So I'm in a foot race with this 14-year-old 2 days a week, every Tuesday, Thursday when they're all out of school. So I'm training with like 120 middle school, high school kids for track.
Unbelievable.
And just like, fuck it, I suck. I don't know any other way to get better. So here I am.
And that became one of your favorite.
And then, so then the next year, it was on Sunday, they had a sprint event. And, I have a healthy lead going into the event. And then, you hear the announcers, all right, this is where we see Matt finish middle of the pack. This is a damage control event through them. And I was just like, nope. No. I was like, that's what happened to you. If you were bad at something last year, you'd still be shitty at it this year. Yeah. I'm not you.
Yeah.
And so I didn't win the event, but I won my heat. And that was kind of like the cherry on top of just like, this is like confirmation that hard work pays off. Of go back to the basics, put your pride aside, put your ego aside, seek out a professional. And like, technically I'm a professional athlete.
You're right.
And then I'm showing up to Essex middle school track practice and I'm in a foot race with a 12-year-old, So
that's really suppressing your ego.
Very, very humbling. I definitely got some funny looks the first day of track practice because I'm showing up just very unkept. I'm on the tail end of a pretty bad blue streak or depression, whatever you want to call it. So Sammy always says I go from handsome to homeless very quickly, and I was in the homeless phase.
So how do you? So now you're winning. You're recognizable. You go anywhere near a CrossFit gym. You're now one to open twice at this point. You're 16, 17, right?
I don't even. I know I've won the open a handful of times, but I can't remember what years.
At this point, you're at least now known as the guy. And William Shakespeare says, expectations are at the root of all heartache. Expectations are the root. Anytime you're upset, anytime you're frustrated, anytime expectations are the culprit of it.
Yeah.
Because even like, so now you are fighting your own expectations in between the 2 second places, but now you're winning. And the world is looking at you and has expectations of you that you're going to keep winning. How do you not allow that to mess with your ego? Matt O'Keefe said last night at dinner. He said Mat Fraser never reads his own press clippings. How do you not do that when you're Mat Fraser?
Once you get hit over the head enough times, because I definitely did read them at a certain point, and it provided nothing but heartache. Like you see a social media comment of someone giving you a compliment and it's like, oh, that's nice. And you scroll by it, you forgot about it 5 minutes later. Yeah. But then when somebody's, just trying to take the piss out of you, just taking the wind out of your sails. And for me, it was so hard because I was trying to put myself in a situation where I would say that comment to somebody and I couldn't think of a scenario. And so I couldn't justify it to myself. Why are other people talking to me in this way? Yeah. And, you come up with 101 justifications of yourself, but at the end of the day, it's like, all right, well, I just probably stop reading this shit of why am I taking these people's criticisms? Yeah. Like, I don't know them. They don't know me. They have no context for what they're talking about. And a couple things. One, this still holds true today. I've never received a nasty comment from social, gone into the person's profile and thought this person looks really successful. Mm-hmm. Not a single fucking time. Yeah. It still holds true today. Yeah. So it's once you realize that like I have never and likely will never be talked down to someone that's doing better than me. Right. Once you realize like why would I take criticism from somebody that I wouldn't take advice from?
Yeah, so good.
Like if you're walking down the street in New York City and the homeless guy's telling you that, yo, your investment portfolio is trash. I'm probably not gonna I'm not even going to give it a second thought. I'm carrying on of like, I think it's pretty good, you know, or even if it's not, I'm not going to take the advice from you. Yeah. And so I just kind of looked at it the same way of just like the only people that have seen me train or know my thoughts behind my actions are Sammy and O'Keefe. Yeah. So why would I give anyone else a pain of like, I know the information you're saying is incorrect.
Right.
So why would I give it a second of thought?
Yeah. That's so good.
And it's tough. Like, it definitely is a very trained thing.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you make your life about the internet and you make your life around social media, well, then that's what will take priority, and that's what will matter, and that's what will dictate your mood through the day.
Yeah.
And so once you realize that, and you just start putting more effort on the people that you're face to face with every day, that you're actually spending your time with. And for me, it was like, once I'm done competing, the people I'm around, I want to make sure those are good.
Yeah, right.
So that's just where I started putting my effort and kind of ignore the rest.
What I've learned about you and learned from you and spend time with you is that you really are a man of principle, not popularity. Like, the popularity seems to not be a thing for you. Is that like it's not something
Like, is there popular, or like my desire for it?
your desire?
Oh God. No, I don't want, I don't want people knowing who I am. Like, like once you're done competing, it's like, no, I'm just a
beekeeper.
Just a dude. I got my bees at home, got my baby. Yeah. I'm good.
So when you think about that now, think about this next phase of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're a dad.
Yep.
Right? Beautiful daughter. You're growing your family. You're young. You're 35 years old. What does that next stage look like?
You know, I've had an idea of what I wanted it to look like for a long time. You know, even before CrossFit started. Like, that's why I went so hard in CrossFit. I was like, this is an opportunity like I'm never going to get again. Odds are. So I'm just going to squeeze everything out of us that I can, because I had so many examples of people that were athletes and then got plopped into the real world.
Yeah, right.
And so my first example of that is my parents. If, like, figure skating to my parents, from my point of view, is like this flash in the fry pan. Like, I never grew up watching my parents skate. Like, the extent of it was like, if we had a field trip to an ice rink, my dad would chaperone, because he was a stay-at-home dad, and he would throw on his skates and he would spin with all the kids and stuff. But like, I never saw that from them, you know, like, they were very family focused. My mom was very work focused. I had so many examples from when I lived at the Olympic Training Center of these people that never quite got what they wanted out of their sports career and didn't have an education or something else to fall back on. Right. And so I was very, very aware, even before I started CrossFit, there's going to be a life after this. Like, I want the family. I know you don't have to work. Your days are long. You got to have some purpose. You got to have something to work towards, some drive. Like, so it was, I knew that about myself. I had retired from a sports career once before. Yeah, like, I finished my weightlifting career, retired from that, didn't even know about CrossFit for, 6-8 months, whatever time frame that was. And so even before I knew CrossFit was done, I knew what to expect. I've been through it before. So I was just able to line up projects. I had a better idea of what I wanted my adult life to look like. And so I just kind of started trying to piece it together.
Most people's adult life, though, doesn't start at the age of 35. And what I mean by that is, like, you're retired. Like, you look at your career, and you're 35 years old. You're the GOAT of all things CrossFit. There'll never be another Mat Fraser. You've had all the success that you've had.
People said that before I showed up, that there'd never be another, and then I showed up, and so I'm like, nope, there will be another. Yeah. It's every year showing up to the games. It's a flip of a coin. Are your records going to get broken, or are they not? Yeah, flip of a coin.
7 for 7 on the podium. It seems pretty. It's almost like Cal Ripken's like Ironman. It was pretty.
It was the same thing when I came in of 5 consecutive. Like, that was the record before. It was 5 consecutive podiums, 4 gold medals, and I remember before I won my first one. Like, I remember doing an interview and it being stated, like, so matter-of-factly, everyone's heads were nodding. We're like people are going to lift more than him. People are going to beat his times, but nobody will ever be as dominant as him again. Yeah. And I was sitting there, and it can be frustrating, because I'm like, in my mind, I already think I can be. Yeah. But no matter how hard I work, no matter how good I am, no matter how much I do today, it's still going to take 5 years to prove that. It's going to take 5 years to get those medals. And so there were times where it's frustrating, where it's just like, it doesn't matter how good I am, I can't fast forward the time.
Yeah, right.
So it's like you just got to set your own expectations. Like, comparison is the theft of joy.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that I have found holds true through my entire career, was like, if you're marking your success by comparing it to somebody else's, it's fucked. You know, it's like, so I remember on my whiteboard in the gym, it was define success for yourself. You know, it's kind of the same as like define wealth for yourself. If somebody asks you like, oh, are you rich? It's like, well, what's rich? You know, is it money? Is it family? Is it experiences? Like, so for me, it was, well, what is success? Is that a big following of social media? Is that having a lot of money? Is that, and for me, it was like, my biggest barometer for success was happiness. I was like, that's what it all comes down to. If you're happy every day when you wake up, who gives a fuck if you're broke?
Yeah.
If you're happy all the time, like, then great. And so for me, that's kind of what I started using as my barometer of just like, all right, I'm striving for happiness. I'm striving for fulfillment, you know?
Even during the games?
Yeah. You know, so trying to always make sure I had something. In my later years, I tried to always make sure I had something that took me away from the gym. Like, I didn't want to think about the gym all the time. I was like, nope, I dedicated enough time to that, you know? So that's when I started like learning about investing and finance. And so I did all my own finance through my whole career. And then a couple years after my career,
Oh, wow.
I had my own Vanguard, did all my own trading, day trading, all that shit, calls, puts, the whole nine. And for me, it was like, it just put me back into being a student, of like sitting there with a pen and paper, watching YouTube videos, having the conversations, asking questions. And so it just became about like, all right, what's going to keep me fulfilled? And always trying to line up that next project, that next hobby, whatever it is.
So how do you go from being so dopamine driven, dopamine being achievement driven, when you're in that, like, I'm going to win, I'm going to compete, and now cut it off? And I wouldn't say cut it off, but now you don't have that competition to push you.
See, so like when I cut it off from CrossFit, it cut off the funnel from CrossFit, but it opened it up from like 10 other things.
Yeah.
So like when I was competing, that's all I did. I didn't do fucking anything else. It was competing. Like I remember it was after I won the games for the first time, or maybe it was after, whatever, early on in the career. And I was like, I want to do something responsible with my money. I want to buy a duplex or a triplex. I'll live in one unit, rent out the other two, have someone else pay for it. I was like, as a 24, 25-year-old, that seems like the very responsible thing to do.
Yeah.
And my accountant at the time, he was like, what the fuck are you doing? He was like, absolutely not. He was like, if everything goes perfectly, you have perfect tenants, nothing breaks, everything's great, how much money are you going to make off that? And I was like, you know, whatever. It's like
$1,000 a month.
Exactly. Like, it's income property money. It's not a short-term play. It's a 30-year play.
Yeah.
And he's so if everything goes perfect, how much are you going to make? So, a couple grand a month. He's like, now you have the worst tenants in the world. The hot water heater leaks. Like, they keep you up at night. Everything goes as terribly as possible. How much is it going to cost you? And I was like, it's going to cost me the games. It's going to cost me sponsorships, all that. Yeah. And he was like, exactly. He was like, you make your living competing. Don't do anything else. Just compete. He was like, the real estate will be there when you retire. The writing a book will be there when you're retired. And so I took that to heart, and I just went, okay, from now until I retire, it's just competing. Yeah. And so it was very fulfilling. I got a ton out of it. It provided life-changing opportunities. But every time I would sign up for another season, it's like, all right, this is another year that we're not having a kid. This is another year that we're living in Tennessee when we don't want to be here. This is another year of force feeding myself for an entire year. This is another. So the list goes on and on of everything that I was putting on hold. So as soon as I retired from CrossFit, I was very ready to be done. I was excited to be done. And I knew my entire last season. So I tried to retire a year earlier, and it was O'Keefe talked me out of it.
Really?
Yeah, so in 2019, you know, I was done. I had done everything I wanted to do in the sport. I was like, I'm good. I'm done. And it was like a week after, O'Keefe was like, I think you got to do one more. And so I'm glad I did. And I think it was very fortunate for like the closure of it all. because it was as excited as I was to be done. It was still the last 8 years of my life. That's what it revolved around. So even if I'm excited for change, it's still a very, very drastic change.
Yeah.
So I felt very fortunate that the entire 2020 season, I knew this is my last season. Every training session I went in, I was like, this is the last few ever.
Yeah.
And so I had the light at the end of the tunnel, so I was able to push it all the way through, and I was able to think of what's retirement going to look like? What's my day-to-day going to look like when I don't have to be in the gym for 6 hours, you know?
Yeah.
So I was able to do a lot of planning. I was able to get everything out of training, competing that I wanted. Like I gave it fucking everything that last season.
So let's say 10 years from now, 12 years from now, you have a teenage daughter.
Yep. Whoa.
At this point,
scary thought.
right?
Yep.
You have a teenage daughter. How do you, in your mind, how do you have the conversation with her? And I know, so I've watched your amazing wife, but how do you have the conversation with her to believe in herself that she can do these hard things and the hard work does pay off, and that what's that conversation in your mind?
I think it's through example. You know, I think when it comes to that type of mentality, there's only so much of it that you can teach, and then the rest is what they saw growing up. What was the example? You know, so for me, it's like when I started school, when I started focusing on university, that was what got me through. I was like, okay, well, how do I study? Well, I'll just do it like I saw my mom do it for 20 years. Yeah. And it was just like all consuming. And so, you know, I hope that Sam and I provide a good enough example, and
because as you described your parents, that the Olympics were a pin drop.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie's never she's not going to know you as the CrossFit champion because she's never going to see.
Yeah.
That, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's going to be the exact same as you to your parents is going to be Eddie to you.
Like, I hope she grows up being familiar in a gym. Like, obviously, like, we have a space like this. Yeah. She'll be running around. So she'll watch her parents work out and exercise as she's growing up. But, like, I remember the day I found out my parents were figure skaters. And, you know, I'm a young kid, and we had an unfinished basement, and we had just moved. So it's like a pile of boxes and bags all shoved in the back corner. And I was 4 or 5 years old, and I was like in the basement searching for treasure, like rooting through stuff, crawling through boxes, because I was like, there's got to be treasure in here, obviously.
Yeah, right, of course.
Well, I fucking found treasure. I found like 4 or 5 of these things about this tall, 2-3 feet tall, giant gold cups, like big trophies. But I didn't realize they were trophies. I just see these giant gold goblets. I run one upstairs. I'm like, holy shit, Dad, look what I found. And he's like, oh shit, where'd you find that thing? And I was like, what is it? And he's like, oh yeah, your mom and I are like 5-time world champions in figure skating. That's one of our trophies. And so for me, now my example is like, it's this thing that they did in the past. I know my dad's amazing on figure skates, but I never knew why, really. And the way he described it, he was like, in the moment, getting that trophy was the most important thing in my life. And then he was like, I was in the airport on the ride home. I had the trophy sitting next to me, and he was like, my chin has never been higher. Like, I am just so fucking proud. Yeah. And he's like, and then somebody comes up, coils up a napkin, thought it was a trash bin, and threw it in and carried on. And my dad was just like, holy shit. Like, this is important to me. Nobody here gives a fuck. Like, they thought it was a trash bin. And it's like my dad's prized possession at the time. And then years later, I'm looking back at it. It's like when my parents are 45, those trophies are buried in the basement. They're not even on display somewhere. Mm. And so, you know, I just saw that as an example of just like, no, as soon as my parents' skating career was done, my mom went to university full time. They started the family. They have these things that I hope they now cherish more than that skating career. And so I just had a very healthy example of that early on, of just, there's life after sport. Yeah. So make sure you still have an identity, because even if you love it and you still want to do it every day, like at 50, I'm not squatting the same numbers I was when I was 28, you know? So it's like, I need to be prepared for this change and be excited for it.
So to that vein, and to take Eddie, not from 13 now, let's go to 18.
Mm-hmm.
So Eddie's 18 years old. She's getting ready to go to college. Yeah. She's getting ready to go to university. You take her to university, hopefully Alabama, roll tide, right? So you and your wife are at University of Alabama. You have plenty of other kids, but your firstborn's now heading off to college. You give your hugs, you give your kisses goodbye. She hands you an envelope. In that envelope is a letter she wrote you, thanking you for the last 18 years.
Oof.
What does it say?
You think an 18-year-old's writing that note?
100%.
Man, I honestly, I have no idea. And it's
She's thanking you for the father you've been. And what father is that?
Man, I have hopes based on my experiences right now.
Yeah.
But even, I know like when I started my CrossFit career, people are like, where do you want to be in 5? Where do you think you're going to be in 5 years? And it's like my guesses were so fucking far off. Like even before I started CrossFit, at the end of my weightlifting career, it was like, no, I would never do CrossFit. Like that was a made up thing, and I just saw how drastically my life changed in the first 5 years, in the second 5 years. I'm almost coming up on 5 years from retirement right now. And it's like when I was competing with people, are you going to open a gym? Are you going to train athletes? Are you going to sell pro? And I was like, fuck no, no, I'm never doing that. Well, and here we are.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So it's like, projecting out another 5 years, it's like, dude, I don't even know what state I'm going to be living in. Like, just because I've had those examples of like, how drastically it changed.
Yeah.
So it's like in another 5 years, it's like, I hope, they feel loved, unconditional love. I hope that they know true happiness. But even the idea of dropping her off at college when she's 18, right now, I'm like, dude, I'm totally cool if my kids don't go to college.
Yeah.
Like you look at my generation and ask a majority of them, what's the worst financial decision that you have ever made? And it's like, going into student debt.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking of, all right, when my generation's kids are 18 years old, what's the guidance we're going to give them to college?
Oh yeah, right. I never went to college.
Like you don't have to go to college.
Yeah.
Like you're picking the direction for the rest of your life when you're 18 years old.
So
fucking
crazy.
3 months ago, you had to ask to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. Right.
So, like right now, off my experience, I'm like, no, like take a year off after high school. Go work shitty jobs, go explore the world, go to good places, go to bad places, like experience the world, learn what you love, learn what you hate, and then make a decision.
Yeah. I think the cool thing is I got to see you work out. I worked out with you twice. And I got to really watch you and how you work out and how focused you are. So I got to see you in your superpower, in your sphere. But then I also got to see you hold your daughter.
Yeah.
And it's such a, like, if you want to know the character of a man, watch them while they hold their daughter.
Yeah.
And it was a total, like.
So what was super funny was, like it's become a thing, especially in CrossFit, of like athletes that are like, all right, I'm retired. And then you see them 3 months later at a competition and then like they get to the next season, they're like, oh, well, I wasn't doing anything else, so I just did another year of it. And I was like, I never got it. I was like, no, when I'm retired, I am retired.
I'm done.
And so, I remember I retired. I announced the retirement. I called the guy that we always had to communicate with for drug testing. So we had to fill out whereabouts. Like if you travel, you got to tell them where you are, all that type of stuff. And I was just like, hey, man, I'm retired now. Can you pull my name off the drug testing list so I don't have to keep filling out these forms? And he was like, let's hold off. And I was like, why? Like, dude, I'm retired. And he was like, yeah. He was like, if you ever want to return to competition, it's better if you stay in the drug testing pool for a little while and all this stuff. I'm like, fine, whatever. I'll just bite the bullet. And then I crossed paths with him. We went to like a charity event competition, and he happened to be there. And it was about a year after I retired, and I spent some time with him. It was the first time we had like gotten a meal together and actually spent substantial time together. And he was like, yeah, I'll take your name off that list. He's like, you're retired. And I was like, absolutely.
You're like really retired.
Because he was like, I've met you a couple times a year for the last 7 years. And now I'm seeing you 8 months later. And he's like, you're a totally different person.
Yeah.
And I was like, thank you. I'm glad you recognized that.
That's what I'm saying. I'd love the idea of working out with you, but spending time with you and your wife and kids and watching you in that environment.
I mean,
it's
like I get to have hobbies. I get to live a normal, like a stress-free life. It's like, if I twist an ankle, that's it. I just twisted an ankle.
That's right.
I'm not losing, a year's worth of pay. Yeah. Because like for me, it was like I made probably about 90% of my income at one competition. I stacked all my sponsorships so that if I got second place, it would hurt.
Yeah.
Like I made my entire annual salary in the month of August over like 3 to 5 days. So, if I stub a toe badly enough, I'm like, holy fuck, that's a year's salary gone. If I twist a wrist, I'm like, that's my entire livelihood for this year. Gone. So, I basically
no recourse.
Yeah, I basically just lived in bubble wrap and like my life revolved around it.
And now your
because I knew it would end. I knew this wasn't forever.
And now your kids can jump on you.
Yeah, now
you can do Supermans and you can do all the things that.
I started doing jujitsu, or started doing jujitsu. I was on my fucking third lesson and completely blew out my right knee, ACL, MCL, LCL, and meniscus gone in one shot, and there wasn't a single shed. There wasn't a single tear shed. It literally happened. I knew it happened. I sat on the mat and I'm just kind of sitting there. It's just me and my buddy. And I'm like, this is going to suck, but that's it.
Yeah,
it's not going to be a financial burden. I'm not going to lose my livelihood. My job isn't under stress. Like nothing about my life changes other than this is just going to be an inconvenience for 6 months to a year. Whereas before it's like my career's done. Everything's done, so it's like, yeah, the career came with a lot of great things, life-changing opportunities, memories that I'll hold on to, relationships that I'll hope I keep for the rest of my life. But it was for every one of those things, you had to say no to something else. Yeah, right. There's an opportunity cost of doing that. And so by the time I was done, I was just so excited to be done.
Now I'm free to go.
So excited because like, thankfully, I never did jujitsu when I was competing because I'm like, I could hurt something. I'm a beginner. The odds of getting hurt are much higher if you don't know what the fuck you're doing. So now it's just like, now that I'm retired from that chapter of life, it's like, now I get to start living again. Now I get to start just applying that effort to other places.
Yeah, I love that. All right, 2 more questions and I'll let you go. 2 questions I ask every single podcast guest I have. And the first is, you're 35 in 65 years, 70 years when you leave this earth. What do you want your contribution to have been?
Ooh, man, that's a constant debate. I want to kind of like just a bigger picture of how I look at my day to day, or like even just like an hour showing up to lunch. It's like, I want to leave this place better than I showed up. So, even like if it's going to the park for the day, it's like, nope. I remember being with the guy, and it was somebody that he had a character trait that I really admired. And I just saw him pick up trash. We were in a park. He picked a piece of trash, put it in his pocket, and carried on. Next time we saw a trash man, throw it out. And he was just like, no, I just want to leave the place better than when I showed up. And I think if you do that on an hour-to-hour basis, a day-to-day basis, hopefully by the time I'm dead and gone, it's like, hopefully I left a positive impact somewhere. Not sure where it's going to be. I hope I provided every opportunity to my family that is reasonably possible. I hope that they are content and satisfied. They know what a good home life is, all that type of stuff. I hope that. In terms of like externally, I don't know. I haven't thought. I'm so focused on the home life and family life right now. It's like that's where everything is driven. So that's where all the effort's going.
Love that. All right, last question. having got to spend time with you, met your family, have break bread with you, work out with you, sit down and have this conversation. I'm driven by faith. I'm going to go home tonight. I'm going to pray for you. What should I pray for?
Man, that's a good one. Strength to keep doing the right thing. Like, Keith talks about it all the time. It's like in any situation, whether you're the peak of the mountain or the bottom of the valley, it's like, what can you do? It's like, just do the next right thing. And for me, it was kind of similar when I went out, when I competed. Every time I would just ask that I had the strength to not give up when it's weak, to not give up when it's hard. I hope that I never have a lapse in judgment and I miss my full potential. So even now, it's like when I show up, I never ask for the good end result. Like when I would go on the floor, it was never, I hope I win this. It was, I hope my end result reflects what I'm capable of. And so that's what I look for in anything that I approach. Odds are you're not going to be the best at it. You're not going to be incredible at it, but it's just like, I hope I can put my full effort into this continuously.
Really good. Mat Fraser, 5-time world champion, 7 times on the podium at a 7, world-class athlete, amazing father, but even better, just an amazing human being. Check him out. Hard work pays off. You might see him one day on the streets of New York running a marathon. If I have my way, I'm not letting it go. I got his cell phone number. I'm gonna be texting him updates about when.
How's your training going?
Yes,
oh shit!
when this was happening. It's funny because you were like, I don't know. I just thought maybe I'll just run to my house. It's 30 miles, and that'll be my. And I'm like, what?
I think that might be. I think that might be next summer. Of just like. I just don't want to have to schedule it. I don't want to have to show up to the crowd. Yeah. My cottage is like 30 or 35 miles from my house.
So just get up.
So I think I'll just wake up one morning at 5 a.m. and just say, fuck it and go. Like,
I'm just shooting.
Like Sammy, drive up to the cottage 2 hours after I leave and just have a couple bottles of water. Throw it out the window when you drive by me.
Yeah. and I'll meet you there. Yeah. Check him out. Follow all things Mat Fraser. Get hard work pays off. Great human being. Thanks, brother.